Okay, at this point you should have both your sides tacked on, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put the tail on. So one thing to note here, you're only going to have one, you're not going to have two tubes right here. The reason I have this is because some of you are building wide frame beds, which is representative of this outside tube here, and some of you are building narrow frame beds, which is this tube, which is what this bed is going to actually be built for. But I'm going to show you how to mount the tail on both wide and narrow frame. So the way you know if you have wide or narrow is if you have narrow, the outside is going to be 37 inches, and if you have wide, the outside is going to be 41 inches. So I'm going to show you how to put the tail on wide frame first and then narrow frame after that. So if you have a narrow frame, skip ahead in the video. If you have a wide frame, watch this part right here. So I'm going to start by showing you, so this is the right side, passenger side part of the tail. It's going to go right here. So for the wide frame, what I did is I have my shelf jig that we use to mount all of the sides in the front, and I have it welded on the inside edge, and the bottom side of this piece is 1 3/4 inches from the top. We're going for the same level up and down as all of the sides and the front pieces. So I have this shelf jig welded at a 90-degree angle. Again, the bottom face is 1 3/4 inches from the top edge, and this is on the inside. This is to put right here just to kind of hold your tail piece in place while you tack weld it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to tack weld this. So your shelf jig is going to act as the shelf to actually put it on your piece A of your inner frame. So this is the narrow frame, so ignore this piece right here. If you have a wide frame, you're going to want to do everything in reference to this piece, which is where your frame is going to actually sit if you have the wide frame model. So if you did everything correctly to this point, you need to line up the outer edge of your tail piece with the outside edge of your outer frame, and it should also be flush on the top here. So the top of your side piece should be flush with the top edge of your tail piece. Once you have that, I'm just going to tack it in the corner. And then also you're going to tack on the back side here on the junction of your main frame piece or your inner frame piece A. Just 2 tack welds. You're going to go ahead and do the same for the other side, and then I'll show you how to put in the middle piece, but it's going to be very similar to the side piece. Okay, so this is how to put your center tail piece on if you're doing the wide frame. So if you have the wide frame model, you should already have your 2 side pieces tacked, welded into place. And then the next thing you're going to do is I just have 2 pieces of scrap. These are some of the light hole cutouts from when I cut out the light holes. I just have it welded on the top edge here. And this is just going to act as a shelf to sit it on top of your 2 edge pieces. So just get your 2 pieces of scrap and use those as a shelf to kind of set this in place. So one thing to note here is if you don't have a perfectly matched up seam on both sides, you know, if it's a little too, if it doesn't quite fit in there, it's a little too wide, it's a lot easier to adjust your side pieces. So if you have some sort of discrepancy here where you have a little bit too much of a gap, or it doesn't quite fit in here right, the best thing to do is cut your 2 side pieces loose, or one of them, move them out or in a little bit, just so that this fits in there nicely, because you don't want to go to grinding on this really long side, because the chances of you getting it straight when you're grinding it is very low. So if this doesn't fit in here properly, as in both sides butt up nicely and snug, everything square, move your 2 outside pieces around. And if you have a little bit, if this is a little bit higher than this edge, not a big deal. You can just grind it off once we get all of this tacked into place. If it hangs off the outside a little bit, not a big deal. You can grind it off flat. It's just a lot easier to grind off things on this corner than it is on these 2 seams. So once you have this where it is correctly placed in here, your seam matches up nicely, then you're going to want to tack it in approximately 3 positions on each seam. So I would tack the top corner here, in the middle, and then at the corner, and do the same thing over here. Obviously you want to make sure this is an angled outside corner, but just make sure that your two pieces are lined up nicely, because we're going to put our back bracing on here next. So if you have a narrow frame, the next part is what you're going to need to watch coming up, but if you have a wide frame, you should be able by this point you should have your three tail pieces on and tacked together. Alright, so this section of the video is for if you have a narrow frame bed, which again is if your two piece A's of your inner frame are 37 inches apart from outside to outside. If you have wide frame, go backwards in this video and watch the previous clip before this, but this is for narrow frame. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to use our shelf jigs that we've used to hang all three of our two sides on our front piece, and we're going to weld this at a 90-degree angle. I already have mine welded on here, but side profile so you can see. So the distance between the bottom face of your shelf jig and the top edge of your center tail piece should be 1 3/4 inches. I have that on both ends, and basically we're just going to hang it on these two piece A's of our inner frame. So after you get these shelf jigs welded on, again 1 3/4 inches from bottom face to the top edge, you're going to go ahead and hang it on your main frame piece A's, and then center it side to side. So it should, if you did this right, you should just see the edge of your inner frame, and then I clamp it. So after you have it hung, should be centered side to side. The next thing we're going to do is put on our side pieces. So this is my passenger side part of the tail. As you can see here, I have a piece of scrap welded on this top edge. Basically what this is going to do is it's going to act as a shelf to hang this edge piece on our center piece. So once we have that done, as you can see over here, we're going to want this top edge and our side piece over here to be flush. Mine's a little bit higher. I'm going to show you how to deal with that in a second. But you just want to get everything butted up nice. You have a nice seam here. And then right here, you're going to tack weld it in about 3 positions. So I like to do the bottom edge and the top edge, and then also on the back side in the middle. So not on the front side, but on the back side in the middle here. Okay, so once you have it tack welded, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to deal with this discrepancy if there is one. So if you did everything perfectly this far, this top edge right here and your side piece of your outer frame are going to be at the same level. Mine is not. Mine's about a 3/8 of an inch. My side piece about 3/8 of an inch lower than this piece here. We're going to go off the basis of the tail because it's based off of the two long piece A's of your inner frame, which are probably going to be more true than the top edge of your outer frame. So grab yourself a piece of whatever you have in your material pile. You'll probably have some 2x2 square tubing. But basically what we're going to do here is my side piece needs to come up, so I'm just going to pry it on my main frame like so, and then get it level with the top edge here, and then tack weld it. Once you get your side piece, I got it tacked in 2 positions here. You might throw some tack welds, like 3 or 4 on the back side seam, and then I pried this side piece up so it was the top of this is level with the top edge of this. We're going to repeat that for the other side, and once we get that done, we'll go on to the next step.